So if we have to give up identity related information in order to use a CBDC, or if we're even, allowed to do otherwise, who knows, how do we protect ourselves anyway, right? Specifically with respect to our identity, right? And so in a recent paper published by the Office of Science and Technology from the White House, a couple ideas are thrown out there. Might not be great, but at least they're thrown out there. So before we start with that, how exactly are we defining, identity privacy, right? Or identity related information, which in all honesty, in that paper, that is the big question. They even said, and I quote, "A key question is what kind of information would be considered identity related information," right? So even they don't define that specifically. But in terms of identity privacy, they say that identity privacy concerns the extent to which individuals can keep various attributes related to their identity confidential from different parties, right? And those different parties in this respect are the central bank or intermediaries, right? To keep those in mind. So how exactly can we, keep, or how could the system be constructed to keep at least some privacy in that respect? And one of the ideas is pseudonymous payment addresses, right? To where, it's not really like your identity isn't there in the address itself to where it directly connects to you. There's another layer somehow, right? And so they say this may provide extra privacy, but it can't trivially link back to the individual, right? Whether it be through transaction history or whatever the case may be, right? There has to be some other form of, making it more difficult to where basically there's specific entities who are able to track that back. Maybe there's like a process that's known to be able to kind of solve a puzzle or whatever the case may be, to be able to do that in order to use that process at least to fruition. Maybe you need judicial approval or whatever the case may be, right? With the system not set in stone, it's just kind of opining to a certain degree. But anyways, so one thing to keep in mind is, in general, the vulnerabilities for pseudonymous methods could allow for de-anonymization, and sufficiently motivated parties could make them useless, right? So again, like, who exactly can figure this out? Maybe there's a process or something to where you need multiple entities in order to do it, or however they decide to do this in general, if they do it, right? Keeping that in mind. So, and the biggest thing with respect to privacy, I'll say, is any privacy scheme at all will likely have vulnerabilities, at least somewhere in it itself. And so even the more private, we'll say, models do not guarantee privacy. They're kind of just more protections to, I guess, help out, for lack of a better term, right? This is supposed to make it more difficult for your information to get out there, for however it may or may not happen to do so, right? Something to keep in mind. But the best way to prevent that in general, and just kind of a general principle for identity related information to begin with, would be, and they say this in the paper explicitly, is minimizing the amount of extraneous data collected in the first place, right? Need to make sure, and that's why that's the big question for privacy in CBDCs, is how are we defining this identity related information? Because you don't want to be able to, or you don't want to collect any extra data than you absolutely need, that is absolutely necessary for whatever, right? If their intentions are pure as the driven snow, or whatever saying you want to use. And I say that in that way to be just kind of, I'm not here to pass judgments in this specific video. That's not the purpose for these videos. But you could probably tell how I think about that kind of stuff. But anyways, you can't just go and collect any or all data for these in general. Again, there's so many other design choices, which is why I kind of chose to look at kind of each design choice from different angles and do it as an entire playlist, so that that's in there for you guys on the channel, so you guys can find that and, you know, kind of look specifically at what kind of interests you, because I do that too. So to where, you know, I don't particularly care about certain aspects of something, and so I won't really study it or whatever. But anyways, I'm kind of ranting a little bit, but that's the biggest question for privacy and CBDCs, is how exactly are we going to define this identity related information? And so that's something that is not defined explicitly in the paper, and I haven't found an explicit, you know, definition in general, at least so far. Maybe that'll change, but in the papers I've read, not quite yet. The only thing they kind of throw in there with respect to that is payment addresses, but that's pretty much it so far, which is why I brought up the one example from earlier. So if you guys have ideas, feel free to put them in the comments below, have a discussion about that. That's kind of the whole point of these videos in general, is to try to kind of provoke the discussion and learn more about it. At least that's how I learn. So I figured maybe some other people are like that as well. But anyways, I'm going to leave this one here. So I hope you guys have a good night, and I will see you on the next video.